नमस्ते। शुक्लां विचार सार परमामध्यं जगद्व्यापिनीं वीणा पुस्तकधारिणीं भयदां जड्यान्धकारापहम् हस्ते स्फाटिकमालिकां विदधति पद्मासने संस्थितां वन्दे तां परमेश्वरी भगवती बुद्धिप्रदां शारदाम्। Respected dignitaries, esteemed speakers, session chair experts, research scholars, professionals, and dear participants. We begin this auspicious academic gathering with a prayer invoking wisdom, clarity, and collective harmony. In the spirit of Bharat's Gurukul tradition, we bow to knowledge as sacred and transformative power. May this conference become a confluence of intellect, ethics, and national purpose. Vedant Knowledge Systems has consistently worked toward translating the vision of Viksit Bharat at 2047 into academic action. This conference is part of Vedant's continuing international series dedicated to integrating Indian knowledge systems, National Education Policy 2020 reforms, research innovation, and value-based education. Each edition of this series strengthens the bridge between Bharat's civilizational wisdom and global academic excellence. It gives us immense pride to welcome you to the 5th International Conference titled Reimagining Higher Education in 21st Century, an inclusive way towards Viksit Bharat via NEP 2020 and Indian Knowledge System. This conference is not merely an academic event, it is a national dialogue. As India advances towards 2047, higher education requires to become inclusive, multidisciplinary, ethical, and globally competent, while remaining deeply rooted in Bharatiya knowledge traditions. Through discussions on NEP 2020, Indian knowledge systems, inclusive learning frameworks, and global best practices, this conference aims to reimagine higher education as a vehicle for national development, social harmony, and global leadership. We now present a special video compilation of goodwill messages and blessings received from distinguished leaders. Their blessings and encouragement strengthen this academic movement towards Viksit Bharat. Let us watch the video. Dear friends, Vedant's mission is to align education, research, and innovation with the vision of Viksit Bharat at 2047. Through conferences, publications, faculty development, youth engagement, and knowledge dissemination, Vedant works to integrate Indian knowledge systems with modern academic framework. Vedant believes education is beyond degrees and it must shape character, leadership, innovation, and social responsibility. Education must become seva. Knowledge must become nation building. Each one of you become a partner in this national mission. You can contribute through research aligned with NEP 2020, integration of IKS in curriculum design, mentorship of youth, policy dialogue, community outreach, and interdisciplinary collaborations. Together we can transform classrooms into centers of national awakening. On behalf of Vedant Knowledge Systems Private Limited, I extend a heartfelt welcome to all our distinguished speakers, session chair experts, awardees, researchers, academicians, professionals, students and media representatives. Your presence transformed this conference into a vibrant intellectual conference dedicated to inclusive national growth. Education thrives when excellence is celebrated. We now move to the announcement of awards and recognitions. In this conference, the Young Scientist Award goes to Dr. Indrajit Acharya from West Bengal in recognition of outstanding research contributions and academic promise aligned with national priorities. Congratulations, Dr. Acharya, for this prestigious award. The next awards are the Best Research Paper Award, which is conferred in 3 categories. In the Educator category, the Best Research Paper Award is conferred upon Dr. M. Sarvanan, who is an assistant professor with Annamalai University. Congratulations, Dr. Sarvanan. In the Research Scholar category, the Best Research Paper Award is conferred upon Jyoti Misra. She is Research Scholar with Maharaja Ganga Singh University, Bikaner. Congratulations, Jyoti Misra ji. In the Students category, the Best Research Paper Award is conferred upon Soni Miswa Dawal. She is PG Scholar at Indian Institute of Teachers Education, Gandhinagar. Congratulations, Miswa. We congratulate all awardees for their dedication to scholarship and nation building. Moving forward towards thought-provoking speeches of our esteemed speakers, it is my privilege to introduce today's keynote speaker, Professor Dr. Paresh Joshi. He is serving at Department of English, Veer Narmad South Gujarat University, Surat, Gujarat. A distinguished academician and an inspiring orator, Professor Joshi has made significant contributions to the domains of language, literature, Indian knowledge systems, and NEP 2020 discourses. His extensive academic experience and research contributions have enriched countless students and scholars. Known for his clarity of thought, intellectual depth, and engaging delivery, he bridges literary scholarship with contemporary education reform. His work in integrating Indic epistemology with modern higher education frameworks makes him an ideal voice for today's theme. Let's invite Professor Joshi to talk to us.
Namaskar everyone. I'm really happy to be the part of this 5th multidisciplinary international conference on reimagining higher education in 21st century, an inclusive way towards Viksit Bharat via national education policy and Indian knowledge system. I congratulate the organizers, Vedant. Any opportunity to interact with academics is something that I cherish. And I'm really happy that I've got an opportunity to speak on a topic which is so very relevant in the Indian context today. Viksit Bharat at 2047, that collective vision, that collective dream is resonating in Indian psyche. Every one of us are so convinced that when we complete 100 years of our independence in the year 2047, India would emerge as world's largest economy. And I have a strong conviction that there's nothing in the world that can stop this from happening. And my conviction comes from the fact that there are so many driving factors. When you look at the India's growth story, we are the fourth largest economy in the world. Very soon we'll achieve the status of being the third largest economy. World's very renowned institutions are forecasting that India would achieve this benchmark of being third largest economy by 2030, and some institutions believe that India can achieve this benchmark even earlier than 2030, let's say 27, 28, 29. Now, when we say Viksit Bharat, this Viksit Bharat at 2047 was a vision proclaimed by Honorable Prime Minister Shri Narendra Modi ji. And as all of us know, it was announced on 11th December 2023. This was nationally announced at one moment. The time decided was, I think, around 10:30 a.m. All the Raj Bhavans had the presence of the academics of particular states, and along with the Vice Chancellor, even I had the opportunity to be the part of that announcement, which was a majestic moment in the history of India. So, Viksit Bharat is now a national vision, a national dream. And Honorable Prime Minister has proclaimed that every person, every institution and every organization should work with a single aim, and that should be, whatever I will do, I must do it for Viksit Bharat at 2047. And when we think of this conference and its theme, reimagining education in 21st century, reimagining education to achieve this national vision, this national dream of Viksit Bharat through National Education Policy 2020 and Indian knowledge system. When we think of India today, one of the biggest moment that very recently happened was AI Summit. And we could see that world leaders were flocking in. The top IT unicorns and their CEOs in single voice said that India would lead the way, when it comes to constructive, ethical use of artificial intelligence, which in some way is challenging the natural intelligence. And at the moment, the world is trying to understand how to use AI in an ethical way and in a constructive way. So, when we look at the present scenario, India is looked at as a global leader which would drive the world towards a very peaceful, very amiable, prosperous future where everyone is living happily. Now, we see the violence all around us, and therefore this Viksit Bharat vision is a very significant vision, a national vision, not for a country like India, but it is a vision which the entire globe is looking at with a lot of optimism. And I said in the beginning that there's nothing in the world that can stop us from achieving this dream and the vision of being world's largest economy. Will not only emerge as world's largest economy, but will also emerge and reclaim our position as the Vishwaguru. We showed the world the direction when we look at the great, glorious history of Indian civilization. And, we would once again reclaim a position where we would be leading the world towards a peaceful, amiable, constructive, prosperous future. Now, a lot of this optimism in what I say comes from the fact that there are economic factors. We are growing at a rate where no other country is matching us. No other country is anywhere close to our GDP growth. The other big driver for this Viksit Bharat vision is the demographic dividend. Again, one of us is aware of this big demographic dividend. It is believed that India is a young country in the aging world. And this is because about 60 to 64% of India's population is comprising of youth. When other countries like US, Japan, China are having a reverse demography where 60 to 65% population falls outside the definition of youth, and they are planning policy to deal with this aging population. So on one side we have economic growth, we have achieved a trajectory which is making India shine globally as an emerging economic superpower. On the other hand, we have a large population which is youth. And Honorable Prime Minister believes that the youth are the agents of change as well as beneficiaries of change. Now, this was a statement he made when he was announcing the vision of Viksit Bharat at 2047. Any country's growth engines are propelled by youth. They run the motors of growth. So along with economic factor, the other historic advantage that India has is that we have a large population of youth. We will not only have them employed in our industries. India is in a position to supply skilled manpower to the rest of the world. Now, the reason why I have chosen to speak on achieving the goal of Viksit Bharat through Indian knowledge system and National Education Policy 2020 is because, when we look at the great knowledge heritage that India as a country has, if we reactivate that knowledge, that wisdom, if we revisit that, that richness in the knowledge texts, right from the Ved, we decolonize our minds and stop saying Vedas, it is Ved, Upanishad, and then, there is a whole tradition of knowledge texts which shaped in some way everything that we see, in this world, in terms of the development in science. Every scientific invention on a very strict, objective scrutiny can be connected to one of the knowledge texts that we have. And therefore, I have a great optimism in the fact that, if we, rediscover the lost glory of Indian knowledge texts, that richness, those great ideas which were achieved through ages and ages of contemplation, would help us redefine India, redefine Indian education, and that redefined Indian education would create skilled manpower, and we would achieve this national vision of Viksit Bharat by 2027. As we move forward, when we look at the history of this world, history of mankind, we would realize that there have been number of civilizations that have come and they vanished in oblivion. They're nowhere to be seen, they're buried. And some of these civilizations, if we name them Mesopotamia, Egyptian civilization, Romans, Greek civilization, Persian civilization, we had Maya civilization, for example. None of them, exist today. It is only Indian civilization that has stood the test of time. And there must be some reason why we're still standing tall, in spite of the fact that we're invasion, in spite of the fact that we were robbed economically, culturally. We are re-emerging. So there's that resilience, there's that resolution. And, कुछ बात है कि हस्ती मिटती नहीं हमारी. And I attribute this great resistance. I call it resistance because we have stood very, very challenging tests of time. And we have stood these tests of time fundamentally because we possess some great reservoirs of knowledge, which we know as Indian knowledge system. I, at this moment, would remember Professor Kapil Kapoor, who says that Indian civilization has always attached a great value and importance to knowledge. And we're witnessing its amazing large body of intellectual texts, the world's largest collection of manuscripts, its attested tradition of texts, thinkers in schools in many domains of knowledge. I strongly believe that every branch of knowledge, had its beginning, had its initiation from Indian civilization. There's another very significant element that we need to realize here, proudly realize here, that India's knowledge tradition is ancient and interpreted like the flow of river Ganga. I mean, it is uninterrupted continuum, never stopping, continue to grow, continue to be interpreted and reinterpreted, and it is that interpretation that I'm banking on when I say that we are going to achieve this vision of 2047 by reactivating the power of knowledge that our sages created. Now, I said a few minutes back that if you look at the starting point or initiation of any branch of knowledge, you would some way be in a position to connect to India. And I'll give you some quick facts. The first book in the world was written in India, Ved, for example, Rig Ved. The first poem in the world was written in India. It is Valmiki's Ramayana. First prose was written in India. It is Yajurveda. First book of grammar and linguistics was written in India. Rishi Panini gives you an amazing classification of grammar and linguistics, fundamentally phonetics. How he sees that sounds emerging out of the iconic Damaru of Bhagwan Shiv. It was later that in say 1940-45, you had people like Daniel Jones doing their analysis of phonetics. We had this precise analysis of syntax and phonology by Rishi Panini almost 5th century before Christ. So, we have to be aware that we are the descendants of great sages who created very rich knowledge. And very revisitation of that knowledge, I believe, is going to, again, resonate in Indian consciousness as a sense of pride. And we can leverage that sense of pride into achieving our national vision of Viksit Bharat. The first book of arithmetic, for example, is Bodhayana. Sulbasutra, it was written 800 to 500 BCE. The first book on sociology, Kalpasutra. The first book on astrology, Vedanga Jyotisha. Then you have first book of medicine, Charak Samhita. All of us know that. We have a whole tradition of these knowledge texts, and I'm reclaiming what I said a few minutes back, that when you look at this rich knowledge texts, the tradition of rich knowledge text, you would find that all the branches of knowledge have their roots in Indian knowledge system. So we could see that the first book of any branch of knowledge, of majority branch of knowledge, is seen, connected to the Indian knowledge system. The idea of zero, the numerals from 1 to 9, the value of pi, the list is endless. So, Indian knowledge system is a reservoir of knowledge that has, become the foundation on which other civilizations have constructed their paradigms of knowledge. And that is how I believe that whatever progress of science and technology that we see today somehow has its root right back into Indian knowledge system. Now with this great tradition of knowledge texts were in some way misinterpreted, misrepresented, if I would say that, during the period of colonization. We've all known some facts associated to cultural imperialism. Colonization was not just a political movement. Along with political movement, as they started getting more and more powerful in their Indian contact, they started making their ways into Indian culture, and this colonial movement of acquainting themselves with the great knowledge tradition and then knowing that great tradition and then misrepresenting that knowledge tradition begins as late as 1750, and we have Warren Hastings, who becomes instrumental. He institutionalizes translation, and there was this whole plan of translating, in the first place, knowing Sanskrit, and initially not a single Pandit in India was ready to teach Sanskrit to this white oppressors. Somehow they found their ways to learn Sanskrit, and then they started translating these knowledge texts, beginning from Bhagavad Gita, Ved, Upanishad, then literary texts, for example, Abhigyan Shakuntal by William Jones. So as I said, 1750 onwards, as a strategic move, Warren Hastings institutionalizes translation. Translation until now used to be a very innocent literary activity. But here I caution you that this translation by colonizers in any way was not that innocent literary activity of converting one knowledge text into the other. Here they had a hidden agenda, and that agenda was to first know the Indian culture and then misrepresent the culture in order to degrade, disregard. Warren Hastings, had a few objectives in his mind when he institutionalized translation of Indian knowledge texts. There was also effort to translate Persian knowledge text, because in those days only literature available in those days were in Sanskrit and Persian, as all of us know. The objectives that I talked about were train British officers, facilitate commerce, govern natives effectively, because when you know about culture of your subject, you know in some way how to control that subject, and for example, physically confining someone would mean you have physically confined someone. But in order to in order to subjugate a person, in order to overpower that person, if you try and make inroads into the cultural ethos, and if you know that person culturally, you will find ways to govern that. And this exercise was done in a very big way, and that is how translation became a political tool, not a neutral, innocent literary act. Now, early colonial translators include Charles Wilkins. He incidentally translates Sanskrit grammar in 1779. And then, he is instrumental in bringing out first English translation of Bhagavad Gita in 1785. After Charles Wilkins, this clan is joined by William Jones. He founded Asiatic Society of Bengal in 1784, and he translated, as I said, Abhigyan Shakuntal, Manusmriti, Geet Govind. These are stalwart, representative Sanskrit literary texts. Grammar and Bhagavad Gita being the texts which we associate with theology. Hitopadesha, for example, was translated by William Jones. So Jones is also regarded as someone who founded Indology in some sense. Now, this institutionalizing of translation had Oriental flavors. Edward Said is a scholar who brought out this term Orientalism, and he becomes instrumental in entire post-colonial interpretation, post-colonial theories. But translation projects were designed to study Indian law and religion, codify Hindu practices, religious practices, convert fluid traditions into fixed texts. Right in the beginning, I said, Professor Kapil Kapoor said that, India or Indian civilization has the attested tradition of knowledge texts, authors, and schools. And, when we look at these knowledge texts, or when we look at these traditions, they were never fixed. They always evolved. They were always redefined. But there was, as I said, as a part of cultural imperialistic plan, intentionally, these knowledge texts were misrepresented on a mass scale, and it was used to somehow degrade, Indian ethos, Indian cultural values. So this was a paradigm. First, get the knowledge, administer that knowledge, understand that knowledge, create areas where you can create misrepresentations, and through that misrepresentation, try and corrupt the mind of your subjects and then gain control. Now, this seems to be an obvious design. And this is how translation was used as a hegemonic strategy. These colonial translators added extensive forewords and commentaries. And majority of these commentaries, as I said, had the intention to misrepresent these great traditions, which are not only great rituals which had ecological concerns and scientific concerns, but then very popularly, though it is a matter of past, but Orientalists and these colonials used to say that India is a country of snake charmers. A lot of these traditions, which, as I said, have ecological concerns, when you look at Vastu, for example, it is internationally accepted that, Vastu principles are so aligned with the ecology that, our rituals begin with worshipping the soil where you want to construct your house. You are asking the forgiveness from the Prakriti, the nature, that I'm creating a disturbance for my own habitat. Now, this is the richness of these traditions that I'm talking about. But these traditions, as I keep repeating, were misrepresented through these forewords and commentaries. These translators interpreted Indian texts through Western frameworks. Western frameworks, when we say that, they have their own knowledge tradition beginning from Socrates, Aristotle, and Plato, and they somehow were willing to interpret this great knowledge tradition through their framework, which I believe was a great failure. They failed to understand. Not only they failed to understand, but they strategically succeeded in misrepresenting these texts and created a situation where many of those uneducated people started believing into those misrepresentation and started doubting their own cultural values, their own cultural ethos. And to that extent, I believe cultural imperialism had its impact on the larger portions of the society. Not that they succeeded with everyone. There were learned minds who were countering this cultural imperialistic plans, strategies. They reframed Indian civilization as ancient but static. Now, when you say static, you are charging a very vibrant, progressive civilization to be static, in that sense, regressive. Mystical but irrational. Now, this idea of irrationality is something that we can all challenge. As I said in the beginning, that it is time that we start in the first place acquainting ourselves with our own heritage of knowledge. And that is what I believe would give that confidence that is required in every citizen of India, that we are the descendants of people who created the greatest of possible knowledge texts, which not only have helped India become the Vishwaguru that it used to be, but it also helped the rest of the world. It helped the rest of the world to discover their own greatness in some to some extent, I would say. So, and at the end of these translation projects, which were on a massive scale, as I said, as Professor Kapil Kapoor himself have said in one of his addresses, that as many as 123 knowledge texts were translated in late 18th and 19th century. And all of these translations were a part of a larger imperial plan, as a cultural imperial plan, as I said. So I think we as people associated with academia, especially educators, have a role cut out for themselves. When we talk of National Education Policy 2020, we realize the fact that this entire national education policy is rooted in Indian ethos. And in one of these chapters, I'm forgetting the precise chapter, but there is a citation within the policy, citation from Kadambari, where education is a good education. Good education is when a student is expert in 64 kalas. Now, the good education is the knowledge or the expertise in 64 kalas. So, our education, the ancient education, which was incidentally destroyed through the introduction of English education in 1835 by Macaulay, which was the other invisible hand of cultural imperialism. By introducing English education, they were also claiming to systematically introduce education in India. As discussed by Professor Kapoor again, before English education was introduced in 1835, there were as many as 257,000 or more gurukuls and pathshalas functioning. And these gurukuls and pathshalas were the centers of multidisciplinary holistic learning. Kadambari, for example, is an example that we always believed in imparting skills. These kalas, 64 kalas that I was talking about, were classified under various skills. These 64 kalas also incorporated skills like engineering, skills like scientific investigation, chemistry, for example. Then, under the vocational skills, there was carpentry and jewelry making. Soft skills were also part of the 64 kalas that I'm talking about. Debate and elocution were considered as the soft skills. So, students staying with the Guru in the Gurukul allowed the Guru to impart the holistic education of life. So, introduction of English education, oblique education, is one way to realize the cultural imperialistic design. The other methodical approach that they used was translating the knowledge texts, the great rich knowledge texts, misrepresent them and somehow corrupt the mind of an ordinary uneducated Indian. For us, the time is cut out to sort of decolonize our minds and, to say the least, the minds of this growing young talent in our classrooms. And one way to decolonize would mean that we acquaint them to the true spirit of the great knowledge traditions that India has given to the rest of the world. In order to do that, I believe as educators, we will have to acquaint ourselves to these knowledge texts. And the way I'm interacting with you on Indian knowledge systems, I feel each one of us will have to. I have a very moderate reading in Indian knowledge system. I'm still reading, and I wish everyone joins me, because every page you turn of these knowledge texts, you become proud of the fact that you are a part of a tradition which could create this knowledge when none of these technological tools were available. And in some sense, all of these technological tools are created in some way by getting inspired from the knowledge our forefathers created. And in that sense, decolonizing our students' minds would become a priority. That would mean we need to prescribe these knowledge texts in our curricula. We need to find ways, to ensure that a right proportion of weightage is given to these knowledge texts. And I think there is a good body of knowledge created in our ancient knowledge texts, which has some or the other relation to the modern concepts of chemistry, modern concepts of physics, modern concepts of medicine, modern concepts of language, modern concepts of almost every branch of knowledge. And we in our branches will need to research and investigate what body of Indian knowledge texts can be incorporated in the syllabi, and that in some way would acquaint our students to the greatness of Indian knowledge texts. I would say that there is a growing interest in Indian culture now internationally. International Yoga Day, for example, I will say again, I'd reiterate that we resist the temptation of saying yoga and start saying yog. That is, in one way, we are decolonizing our pronunciations. So, International Yoga Day, for example, the way the entire world participates, our festivals, the way they are celebrated all over, not just by Indians, not just by NRIs, but by the locals of particular country. And I think I'll quickly draw your attention to an amazing trend that many of us miss. There is a growing interest in the retelling of Indian myth. And a lot of IIT graduates have made their fortunes by retelling Indian myth. You know, you have people like Amish Tripathi, Shiv Trilogy, Ram series. You have people like Devdat Patnaik, for example. Now, their major occupation and largely successful, I'm not saying that all this retelling is justified. There have been texts which we might not like reading, you know, in terms of how faithful or how distorted retelling of a particular text is. But, you know, it's like why there is a growing interest in the Indian myths and its retelling. It is an indirect indicator of the fact that the entire world is curious and wants to learn from Indian texts, Indian knowledge texts in that sense. So that I believe is an indicator. And you know, we have never considered myth as an allegory or falsehood. You know, our myths are actually itihasa, and we have always looked at our mythical discourses as historical discourses. They're, you know, myths are a cultural history, and we have always valued our mythological discourses, our mythology in that sense, Ramayana and Mahabharata, for example. Imagine the number of movies and series, you know, right from Ramanand Sagar and B.R. Chopra to now, you see how many productions are being broadcast and you know, put on this World Wide Web, you know, OTT platforms. So, you know, in some way, you know, we are becoming the interest of the entire world, and that also is an indicator of the fact that, you know, there is this growing presence of India in international affairs, not only in the scientific and economical fronts, but also on the social and cultural fronts. And these are some indicators, I believe, which lead us to believe, you know, the kind of belief that I was showing you in the discussion of how Viksit Bharat's collective dream is going to become a reality very soon. You know, so these knowledge texts and its acquaintance to young minds, explaining the scientific logic behind the cultural practices, customs and rituals would be one way to decolonize our young minds. Why would just decolonize young minds? All minds which need decolonization, all minds in some way, all those minds who are suffering from colonial hangover will have to revisit Indian knowledge texts. And in that sense, I believe, you know, revisiting our own knowledge, revisiting our own great knowledge would allow us to rediscover that confidence that many of us had lost, and many of us still live in that you know, colonial hangover. So, you know, in a nutshell, if I conclude my session, I would say that, you know, that we make a very planned effort to ensure that each one of us in the first place, the researchers who are listening to me, the educators who are the part of this conference and listening to me otherwise, I make an appeal that let's, in the first place, have a good study of our knowledge texts. Let's not just acquaint ourselves, but let's get a good knowledge of Indian knowledge texts. Let's take that knowledge to classrooms somehow. And one way to take them to classroom is to put them judiciously into the syllabi, giving them necessary weightage. Now, each university has its, IKS framework, Indian Knowledge System framework. So in the semesters, in fact, our policymakers are aware of this fact, and they are, the knowledge texts that I'm talking about, they are gradually finding their rightful, respectful place in the syllabuses. This discussion itself is step in the direction that I'm pointing at, that this discourse on achieving our Viksit Bharat's dream through Indian knowledge system and through National Education Policy 2020 is already in progress today and now in this moment. We are discussing it, and this would move forward. So considering the shortage of time, I would say that this was a great opportunity to interact with this participants in this conference, and very soon I am confident that we would achieve our dreams of we will achieve our dreams of making India a great country, and will achieve our vision of becoming a Viksit Bharat by studying, researching, commenting, writing. It's all right if you have your own blog and you're discussing Indian knowledge texts. It's all right if you don't like talking and if you enjoy writing. Write your blogs and acquaint people to the greatness of this knowledge texts. So let's revisit our great knowledge heritage. National education policy allows you to frame syllabuses which have the rightful weightage for the Indian knowledge texts, Indian knowledge systems. Let's take them to syllabuses, let's take them to classes, and above all, let's take them to masses. Thank you all very much for this patient listening. I would thank Vedant, the knowledge system, for the kind of opportunity that they've given to me. Thank you all very much.
Thank you, Professor Joshi sir. We extend our sincere gratitude towards Professor Dr. Paresh Joshi for his insightful and inspiring address that sets the intellectual tone for this conference. Thank you, sir. Let me take the privilege to introduce you our plenary speaker, Professor Abirlal Mukherjee, an internationally engaged academic leader. Professor Mukherjee is associated with the Imprint project as IISc Bangalore and holds a PhD in English along with international research credentials from the UK. He has served as guest editor for Scopus Index publications and is associated with editorial boards of reputed international journals. He is founding chair of multiple global academic networks, including the Association of Andragogic Research Networks, Digital Humanities Alliance, Internet Linguistics Studies Network, and several other international scholarly forums. His introduction of emerging interdisciplinary domains such as viromemology and virolinguistics reflect his innovative academic vision. We now invite you to watch the plenary address by Professor Mukherjee.
Thank you so much, Vedant Knowledge Systems. Particularly, I want to thank Dr. Arjun, and I want to appreciate the topic they have chosen, that is reimagining higher education in 21st century, an inclusive way towards Viksit Bharat via NEP 2020 and Indian knowledge system. It's a very important topic. The terms used are very careful. Reimagining higher education. What is the reimagination about? And is the higher education really the imagination? And if it is, then which points should we keep in our mind when we are reimagining the higher education? The reimagining came post COVID-19, if we want to tell, when we started a complete shift from the offline education to the online education. And the India is not an exception in that case. And what happened in India? It was far beyond our thinking that we'll have in India completely online and digital courses. But that happened. Just after the COVID-19, all the universities, all the edtech companies, they thought that maybe we have certain scope to bring the educational system to online. Though we had the early players like Coursera, edX and other platforms which are doing very good, very well, but they were not that much serious about the degree courses. They became serious after the post-COVID-19. And in India, we have three types of universities, majorly. Though we can say we have four types if we also consider the state universities. And which are these four categories of universities? The first one is the central university, like our Aligarh Muslim University, which is currently providing the online degree courses. Also Mizoram University, which is also giving the online degree courses. So central universities are also participating in this online education. Then we have the deemed to be universities. Deemed to be universities are made with the aspiration that they will provide some specialized courses, particularly not available in the ordinary universities like the state universities, which generally run the traditional courses. So with the vision, UGC introduced the deemed to be universities, and they also came forward and started new courses on technology, AI and all post COVID-19. For example, Symbiosis, BEATS, Geetam, all these universities started their online courses, degree courses. It was not something that we could think about just a few years back, though we had the distance learning system where the students could study in their place, but they had to go and sit for the exam in the dedicated centers for that university. But the digital education is something very different from the distance learning courses. How that is? The classes are completely self-paced. The exams are also, you can give within the time frame, obviously, but at your own pace, at your own home maybe. So that's how the online degree courses became more popular and becoming more popular with every year. Okay, that is very fine. But we have another model that IIT Madras is currently following for the BS program, which is recently launched by them. And what they are following there, they are trying to have the offline exam centers where after a certain period of time, I think that monthly once, the students need to visit there and give the exam in the exam center. This is a new type of distanced and online learning, but other universities, they are following the completely online recorded lecture delivery, and the exams are also online. Now, some serious concerns are there. What are the serious concerns? The first thing is that the LMS that the Indian universities are following, not only Indian universities, I'm taking more examples from India because in Asian countries, one of the pioneers of this digital degree course set is found in India. And many universities, including private universities, I will come like the third category, that is the private universities, which come into picture with the State Act. And we also obviously have some state universities which also jumped in. So these are the categories. So I started with telling the categories. So these are the 4 categories: central, deemed, state, and private universities that we have in India. And they all jumped in together in the digital education initiatives. But what I was telling, the serious problem with these newly launched digital educational platforms which universities are following. Now, most of these universities are either following 2 types of things. The first one is they have their own LMS system, or they are relying completely on the third party. Now, what is the problem with that? Technically, there should not be any problem with these things. But if you exactly experience how things are going on, you will understand that the LMS that they are providing is very early in stage. For example, the central universities now, they are using the same kind of LMS which is underdeveloped, and they are having live classes because they can't afford recorded classes that much, because to give a recorded class you need to dedicate a team. Particularly, for example, Arizona State University, they have multiple online degree courses and they have recorded lectures, but very well organized, very well designed, dedicated teams, dedicated professors. They have recorded them with so much passion, so much well editing. Content is very good. So that kind of level to achieve, you need to have multiple resources, and also you need to engage multiple people at the same time. That is technically very difficult for our Indian universities. So they take live classes, like the interaction that I am having. Maybe in a Google Meet I will have the same interaction. Students will also join. What is the concern for these digital education platforms and how it works? Let me tell you. In that digital environment of the digital classroom, certain things are missing. The first is the student satisfaction. When the teacher is teaching in that class, online class, the students are very difficult to deal with. It is often found that some cameras are randomly on and it's seen that the student is doing some other activity. Sometimes the mic is suddenly on of the student and the student is speaking to somebody else, and the entire class is getting disturbed. No student has the space to ask the question to the teacher, and the teacher is also feeling very disturbed on this online classroom. And that's the problem of the large classroom setting of India, that we have same in the offline and the online batches. If you see that how many students get admission in recently launched Indian courses, like online courses, we find that it's many students, like more than the physical classrooms even. So that's very strange. So what comes into picture second is the digital andragogy. Digital andragogy is the area that I am recently working on. It's the emerging area. So I think I am pioneering one of the organizations which are working on this, and we are launching different initiatives like the Digital Andragogy Research Institute and all, to study on digital andragogy, that how to teach on digital environment and how to make that a success, how to get more student reflections which are positive in nature, right? So these are a few things about the classroom. The third is very important, that is the faculty satisfaction on online or digital classes. That is something also we can't find in the recently launched degree courses, particularly in India. To become a Viksit Bharat, it's very important that we should use the technologies that are emerging right now. For example, let me give one example. Recently, Coursera dropped one feature on their platform, that is the AI agent, which AI coach. And what the coach does, the coach helps in summarizing the entire lecture. It also helps in answering any question from that lecture. And also, if you have any doubt, you can ask. So what happens, the coach has the entire data of that, or the transcript it is fed with, of that recorded lecture. Because Coursera is very famous for having both the transcript of the lecture, materials, and also the courses. And though they are very well designed and well done, very well done. So the coach on that Coursera platform helps like manipulating that data and giving the exact response that you are looking for to the students with the different needs. That is in a way addressing the differentiation in the class. That is a good initiative, and I appreciate those kind of AI initiatives. But in India, it's very difficult to jump into that quality because we don't have the unified LMS system for these online degree courses. And though we are hosting the AI Summit this year, and I really thank the Prime Minister Narendra Modi sir for doing that. That's a very good attention catching initiative, and the world leaders in AI coming to India and finding it's interesting to work with, and maybe we'll do something better in the coming years. But to become a Viksit Bharat, it's not that we are directly jumping the 10 steps and just saying that we'll use AI everywhere. Before using AI everywhere, for example, you are using AI to in the kitchen, you are using AI in house cleaning. Better first you use them where it is mostly needed, that is the digital education. And I think that is a part of NEP. It's a very important critical part of NEP. If I give you one example, and that started also, the world is shifting towards online education. The universities, for example, the University of People, that is a very exceptional university, and we had never we thought that something will be like that. The university is completely a digital university. It's not like they have the offline classes like that, something like that, but it completely works online, and it's one online university. Very strange, right? And they run with the volunteers. They have the instructors and all. Very well structured, very well done. I want to thank them for taking that kind of initiative. And by that example, what we can observe is that maybe in future we'll have institutions which will be completely digital, and they may not have the physical footprints. So I think that is not a very aspiring dream, but in the next few years maybe we will see more things. Also, we started some initiatives on that. So we have to be very much focused, and we have to do more research on digital andragogy. We have to do more research on the student and faculty satisfaction. We need to do more research on the AI integrated LMS for the online degree courses particularly. And we should bring all these into reality before the 2047. Now, how these things should come? If we say that in the 100 years we will become the developed country, it's not as easy as to do actually. So we have to follow certain steps, and those steps are not like finger count 1 2 3 4. They are different for each area. But for digital education, what we should do? Digital education itself is a challenge for India since the crowd is huge. Now, if we today say that we'll directly shift to online degree courses, since we have such a crowd, it is nearly impossible that we can do a direct switch to that. Before looking at, we have to focus on a few things. The first thing is that do you have digital access? That biggest question for India. Like I'm talking about LMS, I'm talking about digital andragogy and all. But though we have like Viksit Bharat beyond GDP, I think we have merely have that gut to say that we have developed much in the human development areas, right? That we have achieved the civic sense, right? That is trolled online. India is trolled online, and it's a narrative propaganda by the our neighboring countries and also some European countries, which portray India as a very civic nonsense country, right? So human development, I think we are far beyond. And what we have to focus on to make digital access more available to the village, not only village, the critical areas, the tribal areas. And it's not that we want only the universities to start this, but the schools Teach for India is doing a very good work in that case. I will like to congratulate them as well. And the platforms like Vedant Knowledge System and all, these kind of organizations, they also work very well with other organizations to help in educational services and all. Knowledge sovereignty. India should know that it's a rich place of knowledge. It's not the knowledge of one decade. It's the knowledge of hundreds and thousands of years, right? Different periods of time. The dynasties which are not present today, they also contributed to the Indian knowledge system. And today's conference is like not only focused on the Viksit Bharat, but also on the Indian knowledge system. And I want to thank the present government again for shifting a little bit focus towards the Indian knowledge system and giving some more effort to bring out or revive the Indian knowledge system again. That's very important. You should know your roots. You are fine, you are using artificial intelligence because it does not belong to any particular person, just like the internet. Internet does not have the owner, right? You and me, all are the owner of internet, or nobody is the owner of internet. Just like AI should be the property of human, all the human, not only humans, should be animals, all the animals, right? There should not be any distinction between human and animals, and the rights should be same. Saying that, I will also try to find out one more concern about the use of the AI, what I should say, technologies in digital education. Now, let me give one example. It is very popular, I think that you also know maybe, that at this point of time in digital education, how AI is used is more on the examination. And what they are doing, they have developed some technology to detect your eyes, to detect your expression, to detect your activities, your hands and all. And they will find out that also eye movement and also facial things and all. So they will find out that if you are cheating in the exam or not. Now, what is wrong with that? The only thing that is wrong is if you stop blinking every 6 seconds, 8 seconds, 10 seconds, it will find that something is wrong. Unnecessarily, sometimes it creates some disturbances, like pauses your session, exam session, it closes your exam sessions and flags it like as something is going on, or you cannot move a little bit. If you move a little bit, it will detect that something is wrong and maybe flag your examination. Now, the motto of developing these kind of technologies in exam and evaluation is to give a better experience to the students. But unfortunately, the recently developed these kind of softwares are giving very bad student experience instead of good experiences, right? I also feel sometimes very uncomfortable with these technologies. Fortunately, I have tried all these technologies. That's why I have the user experience that I am sharing with you guys. So I think that the only thing we are using now in India, maybe with the online degree courses and all, that is the examination and the test part. Please make it in a way so you are not disturbing or making people afraid of that technologies. People are very afraid. Students are very afraid of these technologies. It's not because that they want a smooth technology, but it's because they want to cheat as well. When the online education comes into picture and online examination comes into picture, it's a very strange observation that I have with Indian students, that they often find some way to cheat. And here comes the ethics of using technology. So is it a problem, and how to address that problem? Indeed, it's a problem, but the solution is that they don't know the ethics of using AI, the ethics of using technology, the ethics of digital presence, right? And who is responsible? Here I again go back to my word where I said that don't jump all the 10 steps together and say that we become AI leader, right? If your users, which India is one of the largest users of AI technology, maybe next or second to the USA, and we have a huge number of world in comparison to the world, we have like much more AI users in India, consumers. This consumerism of AI is maybe very fancy to say that we have like second highest consumers of AI in India. So we may develop AI technologies in India and we'll be the world leader in AI. The real thing is that these many users, we don't know that how many of them are actually aware about the best practices. There is nothing called best practices, but the ethical practices of using these technologies, right? So before making things available, it's very important to train, right? For example, the people who knows how the journal editors are hired in academia, you know that the good journals always after hiring they do some training to the editors, and they teach that how to use how to do research, how to check research ethically, and what to do, what not to do, right? It's my personal opinion that the AI platforms, when you are using for the first time, for example, I am using the OpenAI for the first time, I should go through like consumer level training. It can be like a brief training of 30 minutes. I think that's enough. And after that, I will be given the access to that technology. So the AI platforms can design some trainings like that, and without that, I think nobody should be allowed. And the anonymity, that's also a challenge that we can address through the same process, that if you want to use the technology, you should have a proper identity. It should not be anonymous use. And if you want to use something anonymously, some features should be restricted, right? Recently, you have heard about the newly launched AI platform. I am not taking the name, and it had a scandal of like deepfake and all things. Like it was more explicitly giving content to the users. And personally I think that it should not be launched like just for fun, right? Before you are launching, you should have some pilot project. Like please run with a community of people, maybe find out that how they are using, what are the trends, and how things are going on. But these are good to say as thinkers, as the academic professionals, researchers, and all. But the companies, they only want people's attention, people like as users, as consumers, and that is very important for them, because if that is the point of attraction and people are coming to use that technology, then fine. You will not believe that after launching the online degree courses and the digitalization of education, most of the students or the consumers, I will say that they are consumers in that case, they thought that it will be a good platform for cheating. And it's true, right? I observed this personally. And they thought that it will be easy to give the exams online. They will just fill some forms and do that. And they did that for the first few years until we have now the AI technology to detect and flag multiple things for the online examination. So thank you so much. It was a short talk on digital education that is a part of Viksit Bharat and also aligned to the National Education Policy 2020. I again want to thank Vedant Knowledge System and Dr. Arjun Deve for inviting me to give a talk. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Professor Mukherjee, for this wonderful talk. We thank Professor Mukherjee for his global academic insights and forward-thinking perspectives. Thank you, sir. Thank you for being with us. Thank you. Dear friends, now in this plenary talk session, we have with us Dr. Ishwar. He is from Department of History, Satyawati College, University of Delhi. Specializing in ancient India, archaeology and Charan literary traditions, Dr. Ishwar completed his doctoral research from the University of Delhi with a focus on settlement and subsistence patterns in Rajasthan. A committed teacher and researcher, he has contributed significantly to academic scholarship and student mentorship. His work reflects deep engagement with India's civilizational and historic foundations. We now present the plenary address by Dr. Ishwar.
सभी को नमस्कार. गुड मॉर्निंग एवरीवन. सर्वप्रथम मां सरस्वती के चरणों में वंदन. रिस्पेक्टेड चेयर, डिस्टिंग्विश्ड स्कॉलर्स, डिग्निटरीज, पॉलिसी लीडर्स, एजुकेटर्स, teachers, student, and dear participant across the globe. It is privileged to address this August international gathering on a theme that is not only academically urgent but civilizationally significant: reimagining higher education in 21st century through the integration of NEP 2020 and IKS toward the vision of Viksit Bharat. So, today I will structure my plenary around 5 key dimensions. First one is the higher education in the context of the global crisis and, of course, opportunities in higher education. Second will be NEP 2020, transformative framework. And third, IKS, civilizational wisdom for the contemporary relevance. And then the fourth will be on integrating IKS with the global best practices through innovations, employability. And then the last one is about roadmap towards Viksit Bharat through inclusive higher education. So first, global context, especially crisis and opportunity in higher education. We are living in an era marked by a rapid technological transformation, especially AI, automation, and the Industry 4.0. And the rising inequality and mental health concerns employability mismatch despite increasing, increasing degrees. Higher education globally faces three major crises like fragmentation of knowledge, disconnection from the ethical foundations, employability without holistic development. So the 21st century demands a paradigm shift from information transmission to wisdom-centered education. Second, NEP 2020, a transformative vision. So, NEP, National Education Policy 2020, represents India's most ambitious education reform in over 3 decades. And जैसा कि हम सब जानते हैं, इसमें जो फोकस किया गया, स्पेशली इट envisions in the holistic and multidisciplinary education, flexibility and multiple entry-exit options, research orientation through the NRF, internationalization, integration of the Indian knowledge system, equity and inclusion, skill-based employability, oriented curriculum, and इसमें जो मेन फोकस किया गया है कि किस तरीके से सबका समावेश करते हुए मातृभाषा जो मदर लैंग्वेज है उसको फोकस करते हुए, एंड एनईपी डज नॉट merely reform structures, it seeks to redefine the philosophy of education. So the core philosophical anchors, so education is as character building, राष्ट्र निर्माण में चरित्र की क्या भूमिका हो सकती है, knowledge rooted in cultural ethos, culture but globally competent, and it focus on the multilingualism, experiential and critical, experimental and the critical learning, and the ethical citizenship. Of course, civic sense पे भी focus करता है, and this align with the vision of the Viksit Bharat 2047. So it developed a self-reliant, innovative and inclusive India. कैसे इस देश को विश्व गुरु बनने की जो प्रक्रिया है, जो प्रधानमंत्री जी का सपना है, उसको पूरा करने की तरफ हम कैसे आगे बढ़े, इस बात को ध्यान में रखते हुए हमें श्रेष्ठ भारत बनाने की तरफ ज्ञान के क्षेत्र में कैसे आगे बढ़ा जा सकता है. तीसरी मुख्य बात है इंडियन नॉलेज सिस्टम. सो बियॉन्ड हेरिटेज टुवर्ड फ्यूचर. हमें अपने इस विरासत का संरक्षण भी करना है और हमें आगे अपने भविष्य का निर्माण भी करना है. सो इंडियन नॉलेज सिस्टम्स आर नॉट relics ऑफ द पास्ट, दे आर डायनेमिक नॉलेज ट्रेडिशन डेवलप्ड ओवर मिलेनिया. प्राचीन भारत से लेकर के ज्ञान के अलग अलग क्षेत्रों में जो विकसित हुई वो परंपराएं, चाहे वो साहित्य में हो या कला में हो या विज्ञान में हो या खगोल शास्त्र में हो, वो कथा साहित्य से लेकर के वो विज्ञान की अलग अलग उन श्रृंखलाओं में, वो वैदिक ज्ञान से होते हुए वो व्याकरण और उस कला के उन अलग अलग पहलुओं से होते हुए कैसे आगे बढ़े. सो दीज include the philosophy, the different philosophical traditions of India, Upanishadic traditions, Shad Darshans, and other Jain, Bodh, and a different type of philosophical school of India. Other the governance and the polity. If we look at the Arthashastra, Kamandak Niti Sar, Sukrit Niti, there are multiple texts to talk about the state, the machinery, mechanism, the part of the state. राज्य को कैसे काम करना चाहिए, राजा की क्या भूमिका होनी चाहिए, क्या कल्याणकारी काम हो सकते हैं, इन सब पे बात करते हुए राज्य को लेकर के, राज्य के कर्तव्यों को लेकर के अलग अलग समय में अलग अलग कई सारे ग्रंथ और एक लंबी लिस्ट है जिसमें इस पे बात की गई है. देन एजुकेशन सिस्टम. प्राचीन भारत की उस गुरु शिष्य की उस परंपरा से होते हुए उस गुरुकुल कि उस पैडागोजी को भी हमें ध्यान में रखना होगा कि कैसे प्राचीन भारत में शिक्षा व्यवस्था, शिक्षा प्रणाली का निर्माण किया गया और एक तरह से प्राचीन भारत में ज्ञान के जो विश्वविद्यालय नालंदा, तक्षशिला से लेकर के विक्रमशिला से लेकर के, जहां पर विश्व भर के लोग वहां पर ज्ञान अर्जन के लिए आते हैं, जहां पर विज्ञान, तर्क, धर्मशास्त्र, अलग अलग विषयों की पढ़ाई होती है, जहां पर ज्ञान के बारे में दुनिया भर से लोग आ रहे हैं और उसका विकास किया जा रहा है. जहां तक बात हो मैथमेटिक्स एंड एस्ट्रोनॉमी, हम सब ने वरामिहिर, आर्यभट्ट, ब्रह्मगुप्त से लेकर के भास्कराचार्य, हम सब ने सुना कि कैसे जीरो के आविष्कार से लेकर के पाइथागोरस के प्रमेय का ज्ञान भारतीयों के पास पहले था। उस खगोल शास्त्र में जहां हेलेनिस्टिक थ्योरी के बारे में बात की गई, जब यूरोप ने, चाहे वो वैज्ञानिक क्रांति के दौर में कोपरनिकस और केपलर जब बात करें, उससे कई हजार, मतलब 1000 साल पहले लगभग हमारे पास उसके बारे में आर्यभट्ट बात कर रहे हैं, वरामिहिर बात कर रहे हैं। तो ज्ञान की उस परंपरा को हमें ध्यान में मद्देनजर रखना होगा। वो दशमलव की प्रणाली से लेकर के वो रेखागणित के वो प्रमेय और विज्ञान के अलग अलग क्षेत्रों में, वो आयुर्वेद और होलिस्टिक हेल्थ साइंस की बात करनी पड़ेगी, जहां विश्व में, शायद विश्व में कहीं पे भी स्वास्थ्य को लेकर के वो ध्यान नहीं था जब हमारे यहां पर शल्य चिकित्सा की बात की जा रही थी। आप सुश्रुत संहिता को देख लीजिए, चरक संहिता को देखिए। हमारे यहां पर वो तो छोड़, सिर्फ मानव के शरीर के अंगों के बारे में ही बात नहीं, बल्कि हमारे यहां पर जानवर जो एनिमल्स हैं, ह्यूमन एनाटॉमी के अलावा जो एनिमल्स के लिए हस्त्य आयुर्वेद लिखा जा रहा है, अश्व के, घोड़े के शरीर में होने वाली व्याधियों के बारे में बात की जा रही है, और उसकी बीमारियों के बारे में भी अलग अलग क्या उपचार की पद्धतियां हो सकती है, उनकी बात की जा रही है। सो देयर इज डिफरेंट टाइप ऑफ, फॉर एग्जाम्पल द एनवायरमेंटल एथिक्स। आज भी हमारे यहां किसान खेत में हल जोतने से पहले उस भूमि की पूजन करके, पेड़ को काटने से पहले उसको नमन करते हुए एनवायरमेंटल एथिक्स की बात की जाती है। हमें विश्व आज भले ही सिखा रहा हो कि हमारे एनवायरमेंटल इश्यूज पे जब बात करते हैं। ऑफ कोर्स इफ वी टॉक अबाउट द लैंग्वेज, ग्रामर, हमारे यहां पर पतंजलि, पाणिनि जैसे व्याकरण करता है। साउथ इंडिया में भी अगर बात करें, तिरुवल्लुवर से लेकर के संगम लिटरेचर के बहुत सारे पहलुओं की बात करें आर्ट्स एंड एस्थेटिक्स, जहां कालिदास से लेकर के भर्तृहरि से लेकर के अजंता एलोरा की गुफाएं हो, या एलोरा के वो मंदिर हो, वो दक्षिण भारत के वो पल्लवों के मंदिर हो, या चोलों के तंजावुर के वो मंदिर हो, वो अलग अलग कला की शैलियां जो विकसित हुई हो, मथुरा से लेकर के अमरावती हो या गांधार हो, यहां जो जिस तरीके के, चाहे होयसल हो, चंदेलों के हो या खजुराहो के टेंपल हो, अलग अलग समय में मंदिर से लेकर के स्थापत्य का निर्माण हो, वो बाघ की गुफाएं हो या सांची के स्तूप हो, उसमें एक एस्थेटिक सेंस आपको जो देखने को मिलता है, हम उसकी भी बात करनी पड़ेगी। हमारे यहां पर वो जो सिविलाइजेशनल यूनिवर्सिटीज जो सदियों पहले यहां पर विकसित हुई, इंस्टीट्यूशंस विकसित हुई, एंड वी वर ग्लोबली educational hub, or we can say the where global knowledge hubs attracting scholars across Asia, and these centers were the multidisciplinary, international, debate centered, research oriented, and value based. So we are talking about the value based education, ethics and values in ancient Indian ethos, कल्चर, जहां पर वैदिक ज्ञान जो है वो बात करते हैं रित की धारणा की। जो धर्म है वो इंग्लिश टर्म रिलीजन नहीं है, वो एक, हर रसायन का भी एक धर्म होता है, उसी तरीके से उस अलग अलग समय में अलग उस धर्म की भी बात कर रहे हैं। वो हम पुरुषार्थ की बात कर रहे हैं, संस्कार की बात कर रहे हैं, संन्यास की बात कर रहे हैं। सो इट इज नॉट स्ट्राइकिंग दैट वी called new multidisciplinary education today was deeply embedded in ancient India. So of course ancient Indian education is the model of the of course हम ये बात नहीं कर रहे हैं कि सिर्फ वहां पर हमें कुछ पहलू ऐसे हैं जहां पर कुछ कमी भी रही होंगी, बट आज के समय में आज हमें फिर से जरूरत है उस एजुकेशन सिस्टम को लाने की। आज अगर हम विश्व कि जो टॉप यूनिवर्सिटीज में अगर हमारी यूनिवर्सिटीज अगर नहीं स्टैंड कर रही है, तो आज हमें फिर से देखने की जरूरत है, हमें न्यू इनोवेटिव आइडियाज को लाने की जरूरत है। हमें सिर्फ किसी के लाए हुए मॉडल को उसकी कॉपी करने की बजाय हमें न्यू एजुकेशनल, हमें यहाँ R&D पे रिसर्च करने की बात है। हमें आज की हमारी सरकारों को उस पर फोकस करने की जरूरत है कि हम R&D में कहाँ खड़े हैं। हम आज AI के फील्ड में, हम क्वांटम फिजिक्स के फील्ड में, हम आज जो न्यू रिसर्च है उसमें हम कितना इन्वेस्ट कर रहे हैं और हमारी यूनिवर्सिटीज कितना आगे इसमें कर रही है, क्योंकि वो रेपुटेशन हमें डेवलप करनी पड़ेगी. So the next point is about the meaningful integration IKS with the global best practices. If we compare with Indian knowledge system with other countries, so integration must not mean romanticization. It must mean critical engagement, contextualization, and innovations. So let us explore how. So curriculum design from fragmentation to interdisciplinary. So IKS promotes interconnectedness. For example, the Nyay. So Nyay, of course, the logic and critical reasoning. So we can connect with the world, other philosophy. Ayurvedas. So of course, the preventive health, sustainability. For example, the Arthashastra like text, which is talk about the governance, economics, strategy, state, machinery. Then the grammar, the Paninian grammar and the computational linguistic. पंचतंत्र की वो कहानियां जिसपे विश्व भर में जिसका ट्रांसलेशन होता है, उसके बारे में ज्ञान की बात की जाती है. सो दिस कैन अलाइन विथ लिबरल एजुकेशनल मॉडल्स. उन स्टोरीज के थ्रू, उस पेडागोजिकल मेथड के थ्रू हम लोग ज्ञान को कैसे आगे बढ़ा सकते हैं. सो दिस टीम इंटीग्रेशन, डिजाइन थिंकिंग, आउटकम बेस्ड एजुकेशन, इस पे हमें बात करनी होगी. एग्जाम्पल, एआई एथिक्स कैन इनकॉर्पोरेट धार्मिक frameworks. For example, environmental studies can integrate the Vedic ecological ethics. Management studies can incorporate Cotilian strategic insights. So, in the field of innovation and research ecosystem, IKS must move beyond textual study to evidence-based reinterpretations, scientific validation, polity or policy application, tech-enabled dissemination. And for example, Ayurveda integrated with the biomedical research, indigenous water management system for the climate resilience. और हमारे पास उसके उदाहरण है, हड़प्पा के वो धोलावीरा का हो या वाटर रिजर्वेयर की बात करें या लोथल की बात करें या हड़प्पन, हमारे पास जो इंडस सरस्वती वैली सिविलाइजेशन की बात करें, हमारे पास ऐसे कई सारे उदाहरण हैं. आज भी हमारे यहाँ जहां पे पानी कम है, राजस्थान से लेकर के अलग अलग क्षेत्रों में वाटर जो कैसे हार्वेस्ट करते हैं. सो ट्रेडिशनल एग्रीकल्चर विद सस्टेनेबल इनोवेशंस, क्रॉप रोटेशन से लेकर के किस तरीके के जो ट्रेडिशनल मेथड्स हैं उसके साथ हम कैसे न्यू लेटेस्ट टेक्नोलॉजी को और सस्टेनेबल जो इनोवेशंस को हम अडॉप्ट कर सकें. And innovation must be rooted in civilizational confidence. And the next point is employability driven curriculum. हमारे जो सिलेबस यूनिवर्सिटीज में पढ़ाए जाते हैं उसमें कहीं न कहीं एम्प्लॉयबिलिटी भी फोकस करनी होगी, तभी हम एक बड़ी आबादी को उसमें ला सकते हैं. एंड ऑफ कोर्स स्टूडेंट्स टुडे सीक स्किल्स, एडेप्टेबिलिटी, एथिकल ग्राउंडिंग एंड ऑफ कोर्स ग्लोबल मोबिलिटी. विश्व की और यूनिवर्सिटीज यहां पर लाने की बात हो रही है और जगह पे जा भी रहे हैं. फ्रांस के अभी प्रधानमंत्री वहां पर आए, वो भी बात कर रहे हैं कि हमारे यहाँ पे भी आइए. लेकिन हमें एक नॉलेज के उस लेवल को बढ़ाना होगा, हमें अपनी यूनिवर्सिटीज को भी उसके अकॉर्डिंग वैसा एक इकोसिस्टम हमें प्रिपेयर करना होगा. एंड ऑफ कोर्स द IKS enhances ethical leadership, सिस्टम थिंकिंग. हमें उस व्यवस्था में लॉजिक्स बेस्ड, आइडिया बेस्ड न्यू थिंग्स एंड इनोवेटिव आइडियाज को प्रमोट करना पड़ेगा. एंड ऑफ कोर्स द यूजिंग इमोशनल इंटेलिजेंस ऑल्सो, सस्टेनेबिलिटी कॉन्शियसनेस ऑल्सो. सो हायर एजुकेशन मस्ट प्रोड्यूस नॉट ओनली जॉब सीकर्स बट जॉब क्रिएटर्स, नॉट ओनली प्रोफेशनल्स बट एथिकल लीडर्स. आज जब फ्रांस के राष्ट्रपति ये कह रहे हैं कि हमारे यहां पर जो AI समिट में जब सभी बड़ी कंपनीज के CEO इंडियंस है, तो वो CEO हम कितने आज मैन्युफैक्चरिंग में हम कहां हैं, ये भी हमें सोचना पड़ेगा। हम मैन्युफैक्चरिंग में पीछे क्यों हैं? आज हमारी यूनिवर्सिटीज कितने न्यू इनोवेटिव थिंग्स में, कितने नोबल से आ रहे हैं, कितने हम वर्ल्ड रिनाउंड साइंटिस्ट पैदा कर पा रहे हैं। हमने अगर सीईओज इतने पैदा किए हैं, ये बहुत गर्व की बात है हमारे लिए। तो हमें एआई जैसे इस फील्ड में जो सरकार प्रयास भी कर रही है और हमें इसमें और आगे बढ़ने की जरूरत है। सो नेक्स्ट, इंक्लूसिव हायर एजुकेशन एंड डेमोक्रेटाइजिंग नॉलेज। ज्ञान के उस क्षेत्र में if we talk about the true Viksit Bharat, and that cannot emerge without inclusion. So NEP emphasizes the gender inclusion, regional balance, tribal knowledge system, multilingual learning, digital access, and of course, IKS also must include folk traditions, tribal ecological wisdom, their traditional knowledge, oral knowledge archives, and digital platform can democratize ancient wisdom for the global audiences. So, and of course, there are challenges in integration. We must be honest about the obstacles also. So, ideological polarization and of course the lack of trained faculty and superficial curriculum insertion, of course, insufficient research funding, and that is also big challenge. So, and global skepticism. Hence, we need rigorous scholarship, interdisciplinary research centers, particular जो एक रिसर्च बेस्ड हमें इंस्टीट्यूशंस डेवलप करने पड़ेंगे, वो सेंटर डेवलप करने पड़ेंगे। एंड थ्रू दी फैकल्टी डेवलपमेंट प्रोग्राम्स, ये जो होते हैं एफडीपीज, ये सिर्फ कार्यक्रम नहीं होते हैं। हमें यहाँ से नवीन ज्ञान का संचार करना होगा, हमें अपने छात्रों तक पहुंचाना होगा, और इस पद्धति से हमें एक नए द्वार खोलने पड़ेंगे हमारे उन छात्रों में। वो राष्ट्र निर्माण और अतीत के गौरव के साथ साथ नए क्षेत्र में हमें आगे बढ़ने की वो राह भी दिखानी होगी। सो एंड इंटरनेशनल कोलैबोरेशंस आर वेरी वेरी इंपॉर्टेंट। अगर हम विदेशी विश्वविद्यालय जो हैं, फॉरेन यूनिवर्सिटीज के साथ मिलकर हमें इंटरनेशनल वो कोलैबोरेशंस करने होंगे, हमें प्रोजेक्ट्स करने होंगे और उसमें हमें पार्टिसिपेट करना होगा। जैसे कई यूनिवर्सिटीज कर रहे हैं, कई आईआईटीज कर रहे हैं। आर्कियोलॉजी के फील्ड में भी मैं खुद जानता हूं कि हमने देखा कि ऑस्ट्रेलियन जो इंस्टीट्यूट है उनके साथ मिलकर हमने एक्सकेवेशंस में भी हेल्प लिया। लेटेस्ट जो सनोली में एक्सकेवेशन हुआ। सो ऑफ कोर्स एविडेंस बेस्ड पेडागोजी पे फोकस करना होगा, एंड in that context, Indian universities will play a very, very important role. So, leadership role of universities. Universities must become civilizational think tanks, innovations incubators, policy laboratories. वो नवीन कार्यशालाएं वो बनेगी जहां से नए विचार पैदा होंगे. And they must focus on the global dialogue platforms. They should create that type of platforms. And they must build Center for the IKS research, Indic research, interdisciplinary innovations lab, multidisciplinary innovations, and the industry academia partnership like PPP mode and industries. और हमारे उद्योगपतियों से भी मेरी एक शिकायत रहती है कि वे सिर्फ कई बार सर्विस प्रोवाइडर बन के रह जाते हैं, उन्हें सिर्फ वहां तक सीमित नहीं। मैन्युफैक्चरिंग में क्या नए है, क्या हम आज कंप्यूटर मोबाइल से लेकर के कितनी सारी ऐसी नवीन चीजें जहां भारतीय उद्योगपति उसको मैन्युफैक्चर कर रहे हैं, तो हमें उस फील्ड में आगे बढ़ना होगा। एंड दी विजन, ऑफ कोर्स विजन के साथ मिशन के साथ बढ़ना होगा। एंड इंडिया मस्ट नॉट इमिटेट ब्लाइंडली, इट मस्ट कॉन्ट्रीब्यूट कॉन्फिडेंटली। हमें सिर्फ किसी की नकल से नहीं, हमारे पास वो पोटेंशियल है, वो विकास के अवसर हैं, तो हमें इस कॉन्टेक्स्ट में इस विश्वास के साथ आगे बढ़ना होगा। हमारी नवीन जो जनरेशन है उनको आगे बढ़ना होगा। सो इस कॉन्टेक्स्ट में हम बात करते हैं, लास्ट पॉइंट है दैट इज अबाउट द विकसित भारत 2047 एंड एजुकेशन एज द फाउंडेशन। जो हमारे प्रधानमंत्री का सपना है, विजन ऑफ विकसित भारत, दैट शुड इंक्लूड इकोनॉमिक डेवलपमेंट। ऑफ कोर्स इकोनॉमिक्स के फील्ड में हम वर्ल्ड की फोर्थ लार्जेस्ट इकोनॉमी बन चुके हैं, और हमें इसमें और आगे अगले पायदान तक हम तीसरी इकोनॉमी बनने जा रहे हैं। और हो सकता है हम तो जो प्रधानमंत्री जी का सपना है 2047 में भारत दुनिया का विश्व गुरु बन सकता है। वी शुड क्रिएट नॉलेज इकोनॉमी एंड इंक्लूडिंग द फोकसिंग ऑन द कल्चरल कॉन्फिडेंस। आज हमारी सबसे बड़ी जो विरासत है, धरोहर है, वो हमारी संस्कृति है। इस संस्कृति के बलबूते ही हम आगे बढ़ सकते हैं। सोशल हार्मनी, दैट इज अगेन इंपॉर्टेंट पॉइंट। अगर हमें विकसित होना है, विश्व गुरु बनना है, तो भारत को एक रहना पड़ेगा। 145 करोड़ जो लोग हैं, इन सब को एक मानते हुए, चाहे धर्म, जाति, क्षेत्र से इतर, हमें अपने एक यूनिटी इन डाइवर्सिटी के सिद्धांत को मानते हुए, राष्ट्र और संविधान को सबसे ऊपर मानते हुए, इस भारत माता के लिए हमें सर्वस्व न्यौछावर करते हुए हमें आगे बढ़ना होगा। तभी हम एक स्वस्थ और एक सुंदर राष्ट्र बना सकते हैं। सो सोशल हार्मनी, सस्टेनेबल ग्रोथ, and in that context higher education is going to play very important role, and higher education becomes the pivot. So IKS and NEP 2020 का जो एक संबंध को अगर हम समझे तो एक अपने आप में इंपॉर्टेंट रोल प्ले करने जा रहे हैं। इस कॉन्फ्रेंस में मैं सबको बताना चाहूंगा कि IKS और आपने जो NEP 2020 के थीम को साथ में रखा है, ये अपने आप एक महत्वपूर्ण बात है। सो एंड इफ वी टॉक NEP, IKS and the global innovations, it means the civilizationally rooted modernity. हम मॉडर्न होने जा रहे हैं, अच्छी बात है, मॉडर्निटी कोई प्रॉब्लम नहीं है, बट हमें अपनी जड़ों को भूलना नहीं है। हमारी संस्कृति, हमारी धरोहर, हमारी परिवार व्यवस्था, दैट इज वेरी इंपॉर्टेंट। हम अपने परिवार और हमें अपनी संस्कृति को भूल के अगर हम सिर्फ वेस्टर्नाइजेशन की ओर मूव करते हैं, उस नकल से हमें ज्यादा फायदा नहीं होने वाला है। सो ऑफ कोर्स अ प्रपोज्ड 5 पिलर फ्रेमवर्क फॉर द इम्प्लीमेशन। हमें क्या करना पड़ेगा? हमें एपिस्टेमिक डीकोलोनाइजेशन, जो हमारे दिमाग का कोलोनाइजेशन हुआ है, जिस तरीके से हर क्षेत्र में हम कॉलोनाइज हुए हैं, सो हमें डीकोलोनाइज करना इंपॉर्टेंट है। ज्ञान के उस परिवेश को हमें सिर्फ वो जो हमें बताए गए जो फ्रेमवर्क है, जो चश्मा है, उससे भी इतर देखना पड़ेगा, चाहे वो लेफ्ट के उस स्कॉलर्स ने बताया हो या कहीं विश्व के स्थापित कई एनजीओ और कई विचारधाराओं के तहत। हम रिविजिटिंग सिलेबाई एंड रिसर्च फ्रेमवर्क्स, हमें ज्ञान की, हमें हमारे अतीत की उस धरोहर को भी समझना है। हमें उन्हें जो हमारे अनसंग हीरोज हैं उनको भी समझना है, हमारी संस्कृति को भी समझना है, लेकिन हमारा विजन आगे की ओर बढ़ना है। सो ऑफ कोर्स, एंड सेकंड पॉइंट इज द मल्टी डिसिप्लिनरी इंटीग्रेशन। हमें उस मल्टीपल जो डिसिप्लिन है उनको साथ में समझते हुए एक होलिस्टिक डेवलपमेंट की ओर आगे बढ़ना है। ब्रेकिंग सिलोज बिटवीन द साइंस, ह्यूमैनिटीज एंड ट्रेडिशनल नॉलेज। ट्रेडिशनल नॉलेज है, ओरल लिटरेचर है, जो हमारी कहीं जो कहानियां हैं उसमें से स्थापित ज्ञान है, जो प्राचीन परंपराएं हैं, चाहे वो ट्राइबल परंपराएं हैं, उनको भी हमें समझना होगा, लेकिन नवीन दृष्टिकोण के साथ, नवीन ज्ञान के साथ। हमें उनके बीच के गैप को भी कम करना होगा। एम्प्लॉयबिलिटी एंड एंटरप्रेन्योरशिप को समझना होगा। स्किल बेस्ड IKS कोर्सेज डेवलप करने पड़े। स्किल बहुत इंपॉर्टेंट है। प्रधानमंत्री जी ने एक स्किल इंडिया विजन चलाया, लेकिन हमें उसको सफल स्थापित करना है तो और भी कई उसमें पहलू जोड़ने होंगे। अब अगर हम स्किल होंगे तो देश की अभी भी 50% से कम, लगभग 50% आबादी ऐसी है जिनके पास स्किल नहीं है, एजुकेशन नहीं है, वो विश्वविद्यालय में भी नहीं जा पा रहे। हमें उस पर भी फोकस करना होगा, क्योंकि हमें नॉलेज क्रिएटर बनना होगा। टूरिज्म और कई सारे ऐसे न्यू फील्ड हैं जहां पर हमें डेवलपमेंट को लाना होगा। एंड ऑफ कोर्स रिसर्च एंड इनोवेशंस पे फोकस करना होगा। सो वैलिडेशन एंड द ग्लोबल पब्लिकेशन। आज हमारे यूनिवर्सिटीज की सबसे बड़ी प्रॉब्लम है, स्कोपर्स से लेकर के जो जर्नल्स हैं, रेपुटेड जर्नल्स हैं, नेचर और साइंस के अलग अलग फील्ड के, और ह्यूमैनिटीज, कॉमर्स, आज भी हमारे वहां पर इंडियन जो यूनिवर्सिटीज का रिप्रेजेंटेशन कम है, तो हमें उस पर भी फोकस करना होगा। एंड ऑफ कोर्स ग्लोबल डायलॉग, पोजिशनिंग इंडिया एज नॉलेज कॉन्ट्रीब्यूटर, नॉलेज हब, इंडियन यूनिवर्सिटीज को इस फील्ड में आगे आना होगा, तभी हमारी वर्ल्ड रैंकिंग इंप्रूव होगी। सो ऑफ कोर्स इस कॉन्फ्रेंस के माध्यम से मैं सबसे पहले मैं आयोजक मंडल को भी धन्यवाद देना चाहूंगा और ये बताना चाहूंगा कि अगर हम इसके कंक्लूडिंग रिफ्लेक्शंस देखें, सो अलाउ मी टू कंक्लूड विथ ए थॉट। द 21st century will not belong to nations that merely accumulate technology. Reimagining higher education is not about returning to the past. It is about drawing from civilizational depth to shape the future. If we integrate Indian knowledge system with global best practices thoughtfully and rigorously, India can offer the world a model of sustainable development, a model of ethical leadership, a model of inclusive growth, a model of knowledge democracy, and that is the pathway to Viksit Bharat. So let us ensure that our universities do not become factories of degrees but gardens of wisdom. हमारे विश्वविद्यालय, मुझे पूरी आशा ही नहीं बल्कि विश्वास है, हम इस फील्ड में आगे बढ़ेंगे और हमारे विश्वविद्यालय ज्ञान के संसार में एक नए ऐसे उदाहरण के रूप में स्थापित होंगे जहां हम विश्व को ये बता सकेंगे कि भारतीय ज्ञान में किस तरीके से समावेश है, चाहे वो पर्यावरण से लेकर के, चाहे नैतिक मूल्य हो, चाहे सबके सर्वजन सुखाय सर्वजन हिताय, वो सर्वे भवन्तु सुखिनः बात करते हैं, वो ग्लोबल वर्ल्ड की बात करते हैं जिसमें सबका भला हो और उस ज्ञान से ही विश्व का कल्याण हो सकता है। वो भारत की चिंतन परंपरा, वो भारत के ऋषि मुनियों की जो बातें हैं, चाहे वो पुरुषार्थ से लेकर के, आश्रम से लेकर के, संस्कार से लेकर के, हर उस पहलू में, उस वैदिक ज्ञान में भी जो मुख्य फोकस है वो सबके इस मानव जीवन को सुंदर बनाने के लिए, उसको सुखी बनाने के लिए। इसी पहलू के साथ मैं आयोजन मंडल को फिर से धन्यवाद देता हूं, वेदांत समूह को मैं बधाई देता हूं और इस इंटरनेशनल कॉन्फ्रेंस के सभी पार्टिसिपेंट को एक बार फिर से बहुत बहुत बधाई, हार्दिक आभार और धन्यवाद इस शानदार आयोजन के लिए। निश्चित तौर पे इस कार्यक्रम से, इस कॉन्फ्रेंस से हम कुछ ऐसे ज्ञान का संचार कर पाए हैं ताकि हम आने वाली पीढ़ी के लिए, हमारे स्टूडेंट्स के लिए, हम कुछ अगर सागर में बूंद भर भी अगर हम उसमें एक सहारा बन जाते हैं तो अपने आप में एक अच्छी उपलब्धि होगी। थैंक यू सो मच। जय हिंद, जय भारत।
We extend our heartfelt thanks to Dr. Ishwar for being with us and allowing us the experience of this enriching historical talk. Thank you sir. Thank you for being with us. The research presentations form the core of this conference. Scholars from diverse disciplines have shared their innovative research aligned with NEP 2020 and Indian knowledge systems. These presentations reflect the intellectual vibrancy and multidisciplinary character of this gathering. At the other hand, our respected session chairs have provided constructive feedback, appreciating the methodological rigor, originality and relevance of the research presented. Their guidance strengthens academic quality and encourages scholarly refinement. Moving forward, we shall listen to the presenters and session chair experts in parallel paper presentation sessions. As we conclude, I extend my deepest gratitude to esteemed speakers, Professor Paresh Joshi ji, Professor Abirlal Mukherjee, Dr. Ishwar ji, our esteemed session chair experts, Dr. Anubhav Kumar Prasad ji, Dr. Madhu A ji, Dr. Archana JR, Dr. Priyanka Mishra ji, Dr. Rushi Joshi ji, our researchers, organizing committee members, technical team, media partners and dear participants. This conference reaffirms our collective resolve to reimagine higher education, to integrate National Education Policy 2020 and Indian knowledge systems, and to work tirelessly towards the realization of Viksit Bharat. Thank you all. Thank you. Jai Hind.